I didn't come from money. Matter of fact, I didn't even have a real estate license, and I built a $200 million a year real estate business. And I'm going to show you exactly how I did it. I got licensed a little over 10 years ago. When I was licensed as a 20-something-year-old kid, I dropped out of college, so I had no college degree. I didn't have that much money. I had less than $30,000 to my name. I got into this world of real estate because a friend of mine, we were watching Million Dollar Listing New York, Ryan Serhant, go out there and sell these beautiful condos, a $3 million condo, and make $150,000. I'm like, I'm struggling to make 40 grand a year or at my job at the time. This is totally something I could do, but I never thought about getting my real estate license. I always wanted to get into the world of investments, but did not know how I would end up doing it. So a friend of mine said, hey, why don't we get our real estate licenses? We both went to the classes, like 80 to 100 hours a week working this job, traveling 2 hours back and forth. I mean, it was crazy the amount of hours that I put into that to make 40 or 50 grand a year is ridiculous. Late at night, I would go to my real estate classes, and I finally got my license. I had to quit my job. I had to go all in. It was like burning the ships, right? Putting my back up against the wall. I actually failed my real estate test the first time by like 1 or 2 points. Second time I took it, I got licensed. And my friend that I went with, who's still a close friend today, he actually never passed his test. So my life changed forever, and his life didn't really change much. And I really owe him a lot for getting me started in the real estate business. And I'm very grateful for that. It changed my life forever. So I don't come from money. I had no college degree. I was bullied as a kid. I was suicidal and depressed for many years of my life. So it just goes to show that you don't have to have this beautiful star-studded beginning to your career. First year in the business, I lost everything. I had $30,000 in no debt coming into the industry. My first 12 months, I made nothing for the first nearly 11 months. First 10 months, I made nothing. And I was in the residential space, actually. I was in the residential business as a broker. The 11th month, I finally sold my first property. And then my 12th month, I sold the second one, and I made like $30,000. So I was able to pay off a lot of debt. But, I still had like 20 grand left over. So I paid off like $10,000 worth of debt. I took my first dollars and I invested in a few things. CRM system, because I didn't have one. A dialer for myself so I could make some sales calls, and a coach was the next thing I bought. I invested every dollar I had. Like, and the coach was like 12 grand. The dialer was $200 a month, and then the CRM system was another $100 a month. I invested all that, and then I bought a new computer and a nice new laptop. I bought some new monitors and stuff like that. So, I'm going to build my business. Like, I need the right equipment, and I got started. Because before that, I had like a really janky crap laptop, a crappy 20-year-old monitor from my dad. Look, it's what you have at 20, right? It just made it work. I got to work, and that next year, my business, I went from $1.5 million worth of sales, so I made like 30 grand, 2% on $1.5 million worth of business. That was my commission, 2%. I grew it to 15 million within that next 24 months. The problem was that I signed a really bad deal with a brokerage, an organization I worked with, and I made like no money. It was like 350,000 in fees, 350,000 in fees in commissions. I made like 40 or 50 grand, but I got credit for all the sales that I did, but I made no money. And I was like, screw this industry, this sucks. I then went on to start every business you can possibly imagine. And this is a really important key point here, because at the very beginning of my career, one thing that I had was unwavering motivation. And I was so driven, and I would work 100 hours a week. I was like, whatever I'm going to do 7 days a week. The one thing that my previous job gave me was a work ethic. I worked at a kids' party place growing up, and I had a great mentor. And that mentor, taught me work ethic. Working 7 days a week is just the usual thing. So I worked 7 days a week when I got into business. That got me to that point. But now I just had, when I got into business, the problem was I did not have the right mentors, and they taught me all the wrong stuff. They taught me how to be a great assistant. They were good at the phone calls, but the problem is that I wasn't a good closer. So I was really good at making the calls and setting up appointments. And then, I went off and sold a bunch of properties, but I needed somebody to do the closing because I didn't have that confidence and experience, or didn't feel like I had it. So I had mentors there. And then I made a big mistake was I left the industry, actually. I blamed the industry. I was like, oh, real estate isn't for me. I think a lot of people feel that way. I finally went to a Tony Robbins event, and at the Tony Robbins event, I got refocused and recentered, and I was like, I need a coach again. Because when I had a coach, I started making money, and I stopped having a coach. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to invest in a Tony Robbins coach. So I did. That time I put all on credit cards because I just didn't have the money at the time. I know that if I invest in me, I will make the money. My coach, the very first thing he said to me was like, hey, instead of all these different businesses, why don't you just focus on one thing for a decade? Because you have an amazing work ethic. You're driven. Anybody who can focus on one thing for a long enough period of time will typically have decent results. I'm a 2-time college dropout. I don't have a degree. All the business that I've ever done was through just learning from mentors and videos just like this on online and reading articles and books and stuff like that, right? So a lot of people watching this might even have a leg up on me. And if I'm able to do it, I think anybody can do it. As soon as he said that, I was like, listen, like the only thing I've been successful at so far is real estate. I just had, kind of signed off on bad deals for me. So I said, I'm just going to start it for myself. I'm going to do it for me and I'm going to sign the best deal I possibly can. So I was very careful about what I signed. I got in the business and my first year I made just under 140 grand. That year I did about 10 million. And then the next year we did about 25 million. The next year we did about 50 million, and now we do over 200 million a year. Long story short, though, I think that everyone is interested in starting a business needs to understand a few key things, because I think that there's so much to extract from the first few years of my business all the way up to today. And I feel like there's so many little things that not enough people pay attention to. So number one, I think that one of the biggest mistakes that I made was that I hired way too quickly. And I think that if you're looking to start a business, I think that there are so many different businesses that you can start today, maybe even just getting into sales first. I think sales can actually be one of the best things you ever get started in, where get into sales and start learning as much as you possibly can to get yourself to a $300 to $1 million a year earner. Let me explain, because I think so many people try to become a sales manager too quickly. You start a business and it's like, look, Grant Cardone said this a long time ago, which I love and I still think about today anytime I look to start something. Idea to dollar. How fast can you go from an idea to dollar, right? And it's like so many people are just trying to like either hire a bunch of people or market a bunch of stuff. And it's like, just make money, like sell, learn to sell. It should be the first thing that anybody does when they're looking to get into business, which is master the art of sales. Get into the sales world, master the art of sales, and go make a bunch of money. I don't care if it's real estate, insurance, solar. It doesn't really matter what you sell. I just think that you should get into some type of sales role from the ages of like 20 to 30. Get in, like for your first 2 to 3 years, go learn and master sales. And if you, at the end of 3 years, if you're not working 100 hours a week, right? If you're working 4 days a week, say, business isn't for you. If you're working 6 or 7 days a week every week, and you can do that for 2 or 3 years at a time, and you're still not making 300 grand a year, your skill set is the problem. Your compensation might be the problem. The actual thing you're selling could be the problem. Those of you who actually put in the time, energy, and focus to enhance your skill sets, to put yourself in the best, or put yourself or align yourself with the best organization possible, you should be making great money within a few short years, not months, okay? Years. My first 2 years, what I was selling at first was the problem, because I was selling foreclosed properties and my splits sucked. So I was in a poor choice of vehicle and my compensation package, quote unquote, sucked. So what's important is say like, hey, get into a broker, get into a position where you have a great vehicle, residential real estate, commercial real estate, insurance, any type of major tech, right? Like these are wonderful vehicles, but you can sell like a smidge of it. As an example, like in the insurance world, I sold Medicare. The compensation structure in Medicare sucks. It is not a good vehicle if you want to make money fairly quickly. Okay. It is a very, very long-term play. It's not a today play. If you want to get into real estate, I suggest commercial real estate, or, try to get into luxury residential real estate, because so many people are in the wrong vehicle. Anything you want to sell, you need to master the art of sales. Put yourself in a good vehicle, because if you can be in a good vehicle, you can create a wonderful compensation structure for yourself where like, hey, anything that I sell, I make 5, 10, 25K, at a clip, and you put yourself in a focused position, you should be able to make some solid money fairly quickly. The problem is when you try to hire people way too quickly. You get into a sales manager role too quickly, and you become a lower tiered employee too fast. Like if you want to make big money, like you can't just keep calling yourself the CEO. A CEO at the very beginning, you're everything. You're the janitor, you're the CEO, and everything in between. You're the secretary, the marketer, the salesperson, right? Like you're the administrative assistant, like all these different puzzle pieces. And the problem is when you're spending too much time in the secretary role, in the janitor role, as an example, in the administrative role, in the manager role, too much of your time spent in these low paying dollar per hour activities, you're not going to make the high dollars, which is being in the marketing, the sales, right? When you're in these types of roles, like you're going to make more money. Marketing and sales is where all the money is made, right? You got to create the opportunities where then you can transact through the opportunities so you can collect the cash. And then you'll have to even provide the service yourself at the very beginning. And then as that cycle grows and you crush it on the sales and marketing piece, you then can bring on more people to service the people. As an example for the real estate business, the first thing I did running the business was I brought on a transaction coordinator who can handle and service the clients as I can go out there and sales and market. Right. And then I have the person who's going to service my clients. And then as we grew, I can bring on more people to service the clients and then more people to help me sales and market. And then this cycle continues to grow where eventually I have so many people in the sales and marketing and so many people on the transaction management, the service piece of it. I don't need to be involved in the day to day, and I just need to be, as the CEO, to recruit more great players to help us grow this vehicle to the moon. But at the very beginning, you are all the puzzle pieces. And too many people try to get out of the sales and marketing way too quickly when that is where all the money is. So you need to master the art of sales and marketing. Master the art, right, of bringing in clientele, getting the world to know about your business. It's cold calling. It's marketing on social media. It's calling every person you have in your contact book. It's going to networking events. It's, doing paid advertising. It's doing all these pieces. Now, I'm not saying you do all of them day one. I would say do one of them first and become the greatest in the freaking world at it. You can build $1 million business fairly quickly. Keep in mind, it can happen fast. But a lot of people spend way too much time on the wrong activities, which is why they never end up making it. If our average clientele is buying, let's say on average with us 3 properties per year, what we found is that we have the highest likelihood of making the most amount of money by working with people who buy repeatedly versus the people who only buy 1 time per year, right? It's faster, it's simpler, it's easier. They pay more money, they move quicker, right? Like there's a lot less friction throughout the sales cycle. What we found is that by making these small little adjustments, right, like our business can grow faster and with ease, right? Faster than other businesses can. We're going to use an example here using widgets. Example A, you sell 1 widget per customer and you have 10 customers and each widget you sell makes you, let's just say 10 grand. Okay. So you're selling a pretty high end thing. That's $10,000, 10 widgets, 10 total widgets, right? The 1 per customer. You have 10 customers. Each thing makes you $10,000, right? So you have $100,000 over here. Then let's say as a second example, person B just follows the growth strategies that I talked about. And this person goes out and they do, instead of 10, they get 5 more customers, right? So that's 5 more customers, that's 15 total customers. And instead of selling them 1 widget, they sell them 2 widgets. And instead of at $10,000, they go upstream and they start selling them at $15,000 per widget. So now what happens? Think about it, this is a crazy multiplier effect. And it's not like they did crazy, unbelievable quadruple 5x, 10x. No. They didn't need to do any of that. They just did 50% more customers. It went to 15 widgets. Okay. Each person now, they doubled the amount of widgets they sold this person. And then all they did was they grew it, the average widget cost to 15,000. So 50% more. Now I'm going to show you guys the crazy mathematical explosion of money that this turns into. That's $450,000. So they 4.5x'd their income by not doing drastically different stuff. They only had 15 customers, but they figured out how to sell each of those customers a second time to a little bit more of an expensive product. And by the way, that can happen too. It doesn't even matter if it's $1,000 or $10,000 or $100,000, right? It doesn't really matter. But this is exactly how I grew my company from 0 to 200 million as fast as we have. All of you here listening, if you avoid the pitfalls that so many people do and you just follow some of these growth strategies like we talked about here today, you too can have this, some amazing success in any business that you choose. And if you're interested in possibly joining our organization as a commercial real estate broker, please feel free to go in the description down below and reach out. We'd love to work with you. Other than that, guys, I appreciate you guys for watching the video and I'll see you guys next time. Take care, everybody.